A troubled torch singer, a double-crossing bootlegger, and a wealthy married man. Welcome everyone. This week we're going back to 1957 for a biographical music drama called The Helen Morgan Story, starring Anne Blyth, Paul Newman, and Richard Carlson. And this is directed by Michael Curtiz. Our story this week begins in the wild and restless decade of the 1920s. Hopeful Helen Morgan, played by Anne Blyth, drawn by the lure of the big city, begins her career as a Chicago carnival dancer. She catches the eye of fast-talking, double-dealing Larry Maddox, played by Paul Newman, the boss at the Florida Land booth. After a rainout, Helen and Larry get better acquainted, resulting in Helen waking up the next morning to a note from Larry that states, "Sorry kid, help yourself to some coffee, see you around sometime." Hurt and disappointed, Helen decides to audition as a singer at Klingman Agency, only to be turned away. However, their secretary gives her a referral note to Jim Finney's Speakeasy. Auditioning at Finney's, lo and behold, Finney's favorite bootlegger shows up, none other than Larry Maddox. Larry, who hustles liquor for local kingpin Whitey Krause, notices Helen and makes sure she gets on Finney's payroll. Performing on her first night as a trio, Larry shows up and causes a disturbance, only to get her fired and offer her a shot at the big time. Larry and his associate Ben are heading to Canada and want Helen to enter a beauty contest in Montreal, where they will pick Miss Canada. The winner will get $1,000 and a 2-week contract in Broadway with a big musical. Larry fixes the contest and Helen wins, only to be caught and confronted by attending New York attorney Russell Wade, played by Richard Carlson. Attracted to Helen, Wade doesn't prosecute. Meanwhile, Helen finds out Larry used her to export liquor on the train. Helen struggles while Larry goes to jail, only to meet up once more at a house party where Larry tells Helen he's got a new business and wants her to perform at the Blue Dragon. Agreeing, Helen is a big hit and on her way to becoming a singing sensation, while Larry, wanting to be an independent bootlegger, gets beat up by Whitey and his thugs. So, does married wealthy attorney Russell Wade enter back into Helen's life? Is caddish Larry merely using Helen to support his upscale lifestyle? Or does Helen's anguish drive her further into the bottle? Released October 5th, 1957, another version of Morgan's life story, Helen Morgan, was published as a live television drama on Playhouse 90 with Polly Bergen as Morgan. Despite requests to delay the TV version, it aired 5 months before the release of the motion picture. This film received a 1958 Golden Laurel Award nomination for Top Female Musical Performance for Anne Blyth. 78% of Google users liked this movie, stating, "Was knocked over by Anne Blyth's performance. Director Michael Curtiz never disappoints," and genuinely impressed by how well crafted this movie was. Yes, it was. And I did another well-crafted movie that Michael Curtiz directed. Please click the link below for Young Man with a Horn from 1950, starring Kirk Douglas, Doris Day, and Lauren Bacall. And our trivia question this week: was someone else's singing voice dubbed for the role of Helen Morgan? Was someone else's singing voice dubbed for the role of Helen Morgan? So a little more history and the answer to our trivia question. Well, that's next. This week for history, I'm going to dive into the real-life story of Helen Morgan. So, Helen Morgan was an American singer and actress who worked in films and on stage. A quintessential torch singer, singing of unrequited or lost loves, she made a big splash in the Chicago club scene in the 1920s. She was born Helen Riggins, August 2nd, 1900, in Danville, Illinois, United States. After her mother divorced and remarried, she changed her name to Morgan. After her mother's second marriage ended in divorce, they moved to Chicago, where Helen never finished school beyond the 8th grade and worked a variety of unskilled occupations. She worked as an extra in films, and by age 20, Morgan had taken voice lessons and started singing in speakeasies, yes, illicit establishments in Chicago. Her voice was not fashionable during the 1920s for the kind of songs in which she specialized. Nevertheless, she became a wildly popular torch singer. Morgan was noticed by American Broadway impresario Florenz Ziegfeld Jr. while dancing in the chorus of his production of Sally in 1923. A draped over the piano pose became her signature while performing at Billy Rose's Backstage Club in 1925. In 1927, Morgan appeared as Julie Laverne in the original cast of Showboat, her best-known role. She sang Bill and Can't Help Lovin' Dat Man in 2 stage runs and 2 film productions of Showboat over a span of 11 years. After appearing in the 1929 film version of Showboat, she went on to star in Kern and Hammerstein's Broadway musical Sweet Adeline and 1929's classic feature film Applause. She went on to perform with the Ziegfeld Follies in 1931. During this period, she studied music at the Metropolitan Opera in her free time. Sadly, the years of alcohol abuse had taken their toll. Her last film performance was in the 1936 version of Showboat, and her last on-stage performance was George White's Scandals of 1942. Morgan's real strength, however, was as a club singer. Small and pale, she had a sweet, artless, and blues-tinged voice that made her the ideal performer of the new sort of popular song that was being written in the 1920s and 1930s. Amazing. And the answer to our trivia question this week was someone else's singing voice dubbed for the role of Helen Morgan. Yes. Although Anne Blyth had done her own singing in her other movie musicals, her trained soprano voice was judged too operatic for the role of Helen Morgan. Studio head Jack L. Warner had insisted on an intense sound, so pop singer Gogi Grant, her voice was dubbed in. In 1955, Grant had her first top 10 hit with Suddenly There's a Valley, and the next year, The Wayward Wind reached #1 on the Billboard Top 100 chart, holding there for 6 weeks. Grant was given top billing in The Big Beat in 1957, and in 1958 was one of the 3 solo singers in the first stereo LP of the classic musical Showboat. Grant continued making records and appearing on television into the 1960s. Amazing. Great voice in this movie, too. I'd like to give a big thank you to all my viewers and subscribers, and thanks for putting in all your wonderful comments. It's much appreciated. We'll see you soon.